Today I'm going to show you exactly how I created this DIY end table to house my shredder. Let's get to it. Let's get started and open up this bad boy. I got the GBC Shredmaster Home Office Shredder, and this is the one I'll be making the DIY end table for. Here are my plans for how I'm going to make this end table. Then you want to gather your materials, some plywood, some 2x2s, your Craig pocket hole jig, some pocket hole screws, some clamps, and then what I have listed here that's not shown. Next we're going to start by building the two bigger sides, in my case the 16x16 sides. I'm going to take my pocket hole jig and set it up so that I can actually attach these two legs to the top part. You'll want to make sure that you test the size of the pocket hole jig. We are doing two side by side, but as I was testing this here, I could see that it was too wide. So I twisted the middle part off of the pocket hole jig so that I could connect just the two pieces together. Next, you'll want to clamp your pocket hole jig to your piece of wood and the table that you're using. I do not recommend using a plastic table like we are, but this is what we had. So you're going to set it up that on both sides you have a clamp, and you're going to take the drill bit that came with your pocket hole jig and get it all set up so that you can actually get these pocket holes in there. You'll want to make sure that you're using the pocket hole jig openings as a guide for your drill bit so that you go straight in and straight out. Then you'll want to remove the clamp and repeat on the other side so that you can attach both legs. What we're creating here is the top part of one of the sides of the end table. We're going to repeat this process for the other side as well. You may want to clean up in between because it does get messy. Okay, so it turns out we cut the wood wrong, or bought the wrong kind of wood, 1/4 inch, but I had some spare wood, so we're going to use the miter saw to cut what Home Depot already cut for us in the wrong wood, that size that we needed, and we're going to kind of use what we have, and it might actually turn out better. So here we go. So we thought we made our lives easy by having Home Depot cut the plywood for us, which is what I would recommend, but we accidentally had them cut the 1/4 inch plywood instead of the 3/4 inch plywood, so this is what we are fixing here. I actually had some spare 3/4 inch plywood, and we're using the 2x2s that were already cut as our guidelines for how wide these particular side panels are going to be. We're using a level to make a straight edge, but you can use any straight edge to get the line across your piece of plywood. When cutting your edges, you want to make sure you line up the miter saw teeth so that you're cutting on the side that isn't part of the side length that you want. Once we had one piece that fit the size we needed, we used that to make the other side as well. So we had a 16x16 and then also a 13x13 that we used the original one we cut to cut these sizes as well. The last step in cutting these side panels was to cut them down to 16x16 and then 13x16. So once I had the length I needed, I used that to mark on all the other pieces as well. Next, we wanted to finish marking the pocket holes into the 2x2s. Be advised that you are using 1.5 inch pocket holes for the 2x2s, and you are using 3/4 inch pocket holes when we go to do the plywood. So you want to adjust your drill and adjust your pocket hole jig. So right now I'm going through all the 2x2s and leaving my drill bit and my pocket hole jig set to 1.5 inch pocket holes. Next, we're going to build the 16x16 inch side panels. So we're going to start with our 24 inch legs and put the 2x2 that we just drilled the pocket holes into, that's 16 inches long, at the top. I would recommend that before you start drilling these together that you put the plywood piece that you cut in between. We're going to repeat these steps for the other 16x16 inch side that will have the legs attached as well. So we're just repeating the same process and drilling these 2x2 pieces to each other. Next, we're going to drill the pocket holes into the plywood. So you want to adjust your pocket hole jig and your drill bit to be 3/4 inch. Next, you want to mark where you're going to put the single pocket holes on your plywood for both 16 by 16 inch pieces. You can actually do the same thing for your 13 by 16 inch pieces and go around and drill your pocket holes. Now these are 3/4 inch pocket holes, so make sure that you have adjusted your drill bit and your pocket hole jig. We did 3 pocket holes on every side for the 16 by 16 and then 3 on the 16-inch side and 2 on the 13-inch side for the 13 by 16-inch plywood sides. Take note that you want to clamp the pocket hole jig to the plywood and the table, and the plywood piece to the table as well. Next, we're going to attach the plywood to the legs using our 1 1/4 inch screws. As you can see, we are using a plastic table, which I don't recommend, so we put a piece of wood under here to make sure that when we clamped it together, it was a strong, hard surface. Using your 1 1/4 inch screws, screw the plywood into the sides all the way around the 3 edges. And make sure someone's holding it before you unclamp both sides. Once you get everything put back together, go ahead and repeat this for the other 16 by 16 inch side. Up next is attaching the 2x2 to the bottom of the plywood and to the legs. Make sure you're using the 1 1/4 inch screws for the plywood to the 2x2 and the 2.5 inch screws for the 2x2 to the legs. You'll follow the same steps for the other side too. Here's a close-up of the back and of the front of these two 16 by 16 inch sides. If you haven't already, we're going to put the pocket holes onto the 13 by 16 inch sides too. So this is a close-up of how I did that. Once you have all of the plywood with its pocket holes, you want to make sure that you adjust your drill bit and your pocket hole jig again if you didn't already do the 13 by 16 inch 2x2s. It probably would be a good idea to do all of the 2x2s first and then all of the plywood second, since you would have to adjust your jig and your drill bit every time you switch between the two. Next, we're going to attach the 13 by 16 inch 2x2 to the top of the table here along with the piece of plywood as well. So you're creating the second side of your DIY end table. Once you have the second side on there, you're going to attach the other 16 by 16 inch side that you already built. So we're going to attach it at the top and then also attach the plywood to that. One thing I would change is this top 2x2 should be turned to face inward. Attach the bottom 2x2 to your third side, and these are using your 2.5 inch pocket screws. Once you have that, we're going to attach the bottom, and this I actually created a bottom piece out of a 1/4 inch plywood so that I could use my staple gun and then just do a few screws since I didn't need it to hold a lot of weight. And I ran out of 3/4 inch plywood, so that's another reason why I was using the 1/4 inch on the bottom. Now it's time to attach the 2x2 on the fourth side. Once you get that attached, we're going to fit the piece of plywood in here as well and then attach that to the other two sides. The lighting in here was not that great, so I grabbed my Ryobi flashlight to see what I was doing in there. Next thing I did was test to make sure my shredder was actually going to fit and then build the top portion of the end table. I used a 1/4 inch piece of plywood again here in 17 inch by 13.5 inch, and then I cut a 1.5 inch piece of plywood to fit over the top of that so that I could have a double layered and you not see the hinges on the top of this table. Once I had the two pieces fitted together, I clamped the two pieces together and then unscrewed the top part from the base. Then I sanded it down, and I also sanded the actual base with 220 grit sandpaper. Then I went in and grabbed my favorite stain, the Jacobine stain. I tested it on the wood beforehand, wiped it down with a tacky cloth, put my gloves on, and used a clean cloth to stain both the outside and the inside of both the base and the top part of this end table. For the edges, I took a Q-tip with a little bit of stain on it and went into the creases to make sure that I had the stain in the grooves as best as possible. And if only staining was actually this fast, but I did finish all the sides and let it sit overnight. I did not do a second coat, but I did do 3 coats of the polyacrylic acrylic matte finish in the Minwax, and that sealed everything up perfectly. And now we get to enjoy the shredder being housed in this beautiful DIY end table. Next time I'm drowning in papers, I'll remember that I have a shredder hidden beautifully in this DIY end table. Success!